Hey, Van, coming in loud and clear.
Awesome. How are you? All right.
Well, thank you for asking. Thank you for joining us today. We're just waiting a few more minutes, just to get a few people on. These classes tend to start at about 5 minutes early. For those of you, I'm just going to go into intros. For those of you who may not know me, I'm a quiet, shy guy around the office. I co-chair the KW Commercial Committee with my compadre Noel Flam. Um, We are looking to start up a KW commercial division within the office, even though we have several agents that are doing commercial. We don't have like an official division. Um, our guest speaker today is going to be Mr. Vandan, goes by Van Gandhi from KW Elite, KW Commercial in Durham, North Carolina. Originally a Boston native, he now heads up the KW Commercial Division within Durham's office, KW Elite, and VG Realty. He is an experienced commercial real estate broker down in the Research Triangle of North Carolina and has done several land deals for himself and his family. So he's very, very well qualified to speak on this subject. Um, Noel, did you want to do a little intro about yourself?
Yeah, sure. I am a 33-year veteran of real estate, born and bred in real estate. I do a mix of assortment of commercial and more investment residential. Um, I don't concentrate too much in land development, but I do a lot of mixed use of commercial and retail purchasing of commercial. But it's more of a bank owned or foreclosure end is my gist of real estate that I concentrate on. I'm the ALC commercial with Flamore, tech driver for the office, and all around great guy.
That's right.
Very good to hear. Um, so we're, thank you. Around our era, we haven't had a lot of, just so you have a little bit of background, Noel, Van, we haven't had a lot of land development. It just started up too. We had a lot of foreclosure inventory. We were number one foreclosure capital in the state and then the country for back in 2015, 2016. We've cleared through a lot of that inventory. Prior to the '08 recession, we had a lot of demand for land development, which fizzled out and started to finally catch up. We started getting the big developers back in town, and then COVID happened. So you have quite a different market down there in Durham. So I'll let you take it off and correct me if I missed anything on your little intro. I've done several deals with Van, so we've become friends over the last, I think, year or so now that we've done
Yeah,
some commercial deals on
13, 14 months. Thank you. Thanks for the introduction. Appreciate the opportunity to speak to your office here at the Atlantic Shore Realty. I know we've cut a lot of referral checks out that way. So, hey, I'm Van Gandhi. So I guess I'm originally from Boston, and it's just, the Northeast, the weather is just not my cup of tea. And I went to college in Charlotte, and never wanted to leave the area, and saw the growth potential. It was a discussion my dad and I always would have, is so much more opportunity in the South. We could buy things cheaper, you can develop, you can take risks, you can afford mistakes. And it just seemed, we've always invested in North Carolina since then. My dad's been investing since 1982 in the area in North Carolina, even though we lived in Boston. I started out in the retail world because that's where our family was. That's how we made our business. We owned 50 Hallmark stores on the East Coast. Here in Durham, in the Raleigh-Durham area, I owned about three stores, and took a lot of the, I guess, gains and put it into land. So being a commercial broker, I wasn't buying Dollar Tree Generals or some of these triple net listings. We were buying land, and we would just buy it outright in cash. This is a great offer. And so that eventually led me to get my license, because that's how you get paid, is on these transactions. And I started out on the Joe Mitchell team. And when I was on his team, he did a ton of residential, but we would get all these leads for, or he would have a bunch of listings, lots for like $10,000, $15,000, or less than an acre, or 30 acres for 50 grand. I'm like, wow, these are great deals. So we would get a ton of leads. And every time I get the leads, the buyer is like, oh, what can I build on it? How big of a house? What else can we do? Is this a good price? And so I'm imagining many of you are running into that right now is those land lot deals and or they're called infills. You'll see us, I don't know if you have it up there, but we'll have a subdivision. You'll see about 60 to 70 homes, and then you'll see this outcast of a rundown looking home that's they just wouldn't sell to the developer, but those are opportunities of buying the property, redeveloping it, and building a custom home. So the secret sauce is become friends with an engineer. That is the number one thing you could do, and that's the reason why many, I say, residential brokers and even some commercial brokers are fearful of answering questions on land. Is nobody wants to become friends with the engineer because if they don't have a relationship, they're thinking, well, what is it gonna cost me? What is the fee? What is this? And I hate to say it, but the engineer is the number one person that's going to tell you the highest and best use on the property, your setbacks, your due diligence process. Um, they're going to walk you through it because they're also, they're licensed and this is what they do for a living, kind of like what we do for a living. We broker deals and consult our investors and home buyers. So I always say start, if you have a property and you're scared of it or you don't want to take it, obviously refer it out, but um, become friends with an engineer. So that's what I call the secret sauce. I guess going through the reason why I say engineer is because they're going to tell you how big of a house you can build. If it's a residential lot, they could tell you it may not, that may be the best use, but there's a potential to rezone the property for commercial. And if you can rezone it to commercial, depending on the time frame and cost involved, you might, instead of having $100,000 lot value, it could be worth 300,000. I mean, it's a significant difference, and so that makes a big impact if you get with your engineer, get with your town, local municipality, have them to talk to each other, have you be the liaison, and that's where you make the home runs. Otherwise, every day, if you're just trying to buy a lot, get the engineer, see how big a house you can build. Based on that, the secret formula is land value should equal 20% of the house cost. So if you think if you want to buy a piece of land, well, you need to work backwards. How big of a house can we build? What would that house sell for? Take that purchase price. So if you think up there, you guys are a little bit higher price point, say 700,000. Well, 20%, say $700,000 is the selling price for the home. So then the land, you should be able to buy the land for $140,000 or cheaper. And so that's how, that's the formula in that aspect. Entitlements and rezoning, that will lead into, if you're trying to rezone a residential property, a commercial, then that's a lengthy process, which is probably a whole class in itself. But I guess before I don't want to just jump into different things. Does anyone have specific questions, or is there a format you guys want me to kind of address?
Well, I want you to specify what kind of engineer was that, Van, because there's so many different types out there.
Sure, that's a great question. There are tons of engineers out there. So you want to go to more of a landscape engineer or a they won't even tell you what type of engineer they are, but you want to Google and just say zoning engineer or land use, or even a land use attorney. That's the other magic word, is land use attorney. So a land use attorney will figure out ways on how you can rezone a property, perhaps not going through the entire process and getting deals done internally. That's how the Walmarts and the McDonald's of the world get things done. They don't, you don't see them on your town council meeting. They just get deals done behind hand, and that's done with land use attorney. But the engineer, you just Google, just focus on land use engineer. It's going to be different in every municipality. So you want someone who's skilled for giving you a highest and best use for land.
Definitely. I mean, I think up here we use the term civil engineer, but then they should specialize in the the type of property development that you're doing if there's their first time doing it. So I've used engineers on different deals before, but most of my engineers have been structural engineers working on a house flip. And then if you go, we don't really have a lot of manufacturing out here, but if you go into areas and you bump into a guy at a party, he's like, oh yeah, I'm an engineer, but I do civil, or I do structural engineer, work on bridges for the DOT, or I'm a mechanical engineer at a plant
Right.
somewhere, electrical engineer. So you have to be careful that all engineers aren't created equal. You need to, it's almost like a doctor, right? You want to have that subspecialty on this specific purpose, just like attorneys, they're professionals and they kind of focus on their field, even though they may have learned it in school. If they haven't done it recently and aren't aware of the codes or who the people to speak to, or, you know, how to work around different parameters within the specific townships or towns you're in, that could be a big difference between making it work or not.
Absolutely. And then a lot of what I'm spending time, I've been hired by a land developer to go out and buy land. And so a recent transaction I just posted on social media is we bought 100 acres in Winston-Salem. My developer was in talks with the seller maybe about a year and a half ago, and brought me into the deal to see what price we can buy it for. So this 100 acres, we already knew without zoning changes, we could build, I don't know, it was like 200 single family homes and 150 townhomes. And I'm like, well, that's great. But the purchase price, that kind of makes sense. But let's see if we can change the zoning. Instead of having 200 single family homes, let's go ahead and get 250 single family homes and 200 townhomes. So our yield is greatly, you know, it's a home run. So we went through the rezoning process of that. We get our engineer, we got Edmunds engineer involved. They were already familiar with the property. They've already done past work on it because it fell through before. So we already had all this homework. We went to the town, we got it rezoned. We started marketing to attract home builders who are begging for land. As you know, North Carolina, we still have land, but there's tract home builders. They're, you know, they treat you really well because they won't sign exclusives, but they will, if you bring a deal with you, they will take care of you and they will pay you a fee. So you don't always have to seek the fee, which is normally 3% sales fee. You won't seek the fee from always the seller, but you'll seek it from the land developer or the home builder. And so we went through that whole process and got approvals, and we had about 4 or 5 builders knocking on the door. So naturally we were going to take the highest and best use with the quickest time close. And so when I jumped in the deal, my guy spent at least, well, I say 18 months. He probably spent at least a year. I came in, I spent another 8 months. We never, you know, we held the paper to purchase. So we were paying earnest check deposits of $10,000 for every extension we needed. And so that was our risk. Plus we were spent another $200,000 in engineering costs. But at the end of the day, with having 4 or 5 home builders bid on this tract because of the higher zoning, we ended up finally cutting a deal, making over $1 million profit and closing in July. And so, so we're doing the same thing. This is recent. So we're doing the same thing here in Burlington. It's about 25 minutes outside of Durham, and we're doing it all over again. Except we're thinking it's gonna be a little bit quicker because the zoning has been grandfathered in. So all of this information, whenever I say zoning, it comes back to the engineers, it comes back to knowing your market knowledge, comes back to talking with the municipalities. So, so that's where I'm spending a lot of my time as a developer. I love to do the leasing, commercial leasing and investment sales, but I've been hired by a developer to now go after these tracts of land. And so, so I'm spending probably 50% of my time on these deals now.
Wow, that's amazing. $1 million profit on a single deal.
Yeah.
That's what I was gonna say that.
Yeah. Well, we roll it over into the next one and the next one. So if you think about it, you're spending $200,000-$300,000 in engineering fees and local town municipality fees, and that's the part that doesn't seem so sexy or people talk about, because who wants to spend $300,000-$400,000 and
Yeah.
say, hey, I spent $400,000 plus I bought the property for $1 million and then turned around and sold it for 3.5, you know. So
Sure. No, absolutely. There's a huge cost to it.
yeah.
Are there any questions in the chat, Noel, so far?
No, nothing so far, but we do appreciate your links for our agents to see where they can check out and see the PDF we put together for land as well, for regarding the engineer stuff and everything else,
Yeah.
which we all know, for land, as Van was saying, the pre is the most important part of any land development, is the upfront information and upfront costs. Matt asked, how do you find the best land deals?
Oh, how do you? It's good old fashioned door knocking. I mean, walking. When you're driving around and you see it, and you see a nice subdivision, you see what the homes are selling for, and you see a vacant land. Research that piece of land. Look at it. See what the town will tell, what the city will tell you about it, and then if there's more interest, then ask your engineer about it, and then based on that, if it makes sense, then turn around and contact the seller, the owner of the land, and see what their thoughts are and what they're looking to do with it, and then you jump in and you have enough information to craft an offer. So it's kind of, no answer is ever a direct answer. So, but you got to do your research, and then you know the market enough that you have enough market knowledge for what homes are selling that you can make an intelligent decision on what type of offer to purchase the land for. And then obviously we all want a deal, so you're gonna put 10, 15, 20% lower than what you think it'll actually go for.
So Van, the best land deals are more or less, as Matt was asking, the best land deals are not always what you're going to find on the MLS or whatever commercial sites are, because those are already, if they're already out there for subdivision, those people have already spent the money for what Van's talking about. So where he's bought land for $1 million, sold it for $3.5 million, he did the prelim work. So that stuff you see on the MLS might be, if it's ready to go, it's the prelim work that was done. So as you're driving around and doing your thing, and you see a tract of land near development, you can do your pre-research and maybe get that property at the right price before, and then actually sell it. Not even develop it, just sell that land as ready to go.
You got it. And if it's an MLS or even in LoopNet, be cautious, because if it's the joke among commercial brokers, at least in our area, is if it's on LoopNet, it can't be that great of a deal. And it's kind of like, well, LoopNet gives you the best reach for people to view properties, but that's just, you just always, you can't be naive. So that's the other part of it. And if you're in doubt, call your engineer.
Very nice. So I love that it's kind of follow the money, because most new developments tend to cluster together, because a lot of these big builders do their own in-house research and see where the closest exit on the highway or expressway might be, where shopping and retail, school districts, they already know that. So when there's one development pop up and proves the price point, there tends to be another development really close by. So I know Maddie has a agreement with Ryan Homes for the newest developments near our area. So probably down the street would be the next logical solution, I would assume, for any vacant lands. That makes sense.
Yeah, like Noel had a great point, because it's also like, if you see Ryan Homes get zoning approval for 300 homes, the parcels around it, Pulte Homes is going to come, or Lennar Homes, or whoever. They're always going to follow whoever. So the rule of thumb is, someone like Toll Brothers or Lennar or Pulte, if they end up coming first, and they get zoning approval, you can bet your money, I'll bet you $100 million that about 100 other builders will come right behind them. Those are probably the three I kind of watched the most. This Pulte, Toll Brothers, and Lennar.
What we see around here, Van, we have a lot of spec developments of spec, I would say, cul-de-sacs. So in the city of Galloway, there's probably 50 different little cul-de-sac developments of just one street down, 8 to 10 homes on that street. And it's everywhere, all over Galloway. And then one section was built out of streets, but then the bubble hit, and streets are halfway done, not halfway done, paper streets, and it's all over certain areas, especially Galloway.
Well, that's all. So the advantage there is if they're halfway done. Well, how much of the infrastructure was put in? Did they get in the utilities, the water sewer hookups? What schooling districts they're in? If they've done the homework and and actually spent money on grading and infrastructure, then you can work the cost backwards and figure out a good purchase price and take advantage of I call it like an arbitrage because the work has been done. I did this on I wasn't the developer on it, but there was an industrial lot and it bellied up in 2006. A developer took over and he built this up, threw it up for like $50-$60 a square foot, and then turned around and I had buyers buying it at $105 a square foot. So he made a quick profit because all the work was already, like you said, like halfway done. So that there is those are huge opportunities too. So you can't follow a home builder, but you can follow the new, it's going to be in the news. If someone, especially in 2006, 2009, I guess 2009, you're going to see, you probably, if you can find those articles, you're going to see which builders or developers went bellied up and just walked away from the project, and the bank may be holding on to it, or they may be trying to dump it. So
Another question from Matt was, how do you connect with developers? Any advice on development of mixed-use projects?
that's a great question. For developers, it's kind of like follow the train, kind of. Down here, we have a newspaper called Triangle Business Journal, and they'll always highlight, hey, this developer developer within CBRE got approved for this rezoning, and you'll see this person got approved for this. So you'll see these articles, and so what I'll do is I'll look up those developers and look at their past projects. I'll just call them up actually before I call them up, I'll research to see what other projects they're working on currently. I'll do a little homework on them, and then if I think there's an opportunity for me to work with them or help them find out, then I'll reach out to that particular developer and just say, hey, I see you, just kind of, praise them first is, hey, you did a great job on, working on 123 Bank Avenue. And now I see you're working on 245 Bank Avenue. And I got 565 Bank Avenue, which I think would be a perfect opportunity for you. And so kind of give some kind of value, but just call them. I mean, look up these developers, look at who's been working in the area or areas that you want to work in. Just call them. They will answer your call because they're always looking for brokers like us to bring them opportunities. So it's not really like they're gonna shut you. At least here in the South, they won't. In North Carolina, they're like, I started doing LinkedIn messages. I started looking up, if you go on LinkedIn and you start putting land developers or just regular developers in Charlotte, North Carolina, in Winston-Salem, you just send them a friend message with a small note, they'll respond back. And so I hope that helps. Yeah.
I have a question for you. Advice for we have some new agents on the call as well with us. So advice for newer agents that are not as experienced in the land development, and they speak to, those buyers that give a call, it's like, wow, I saw this piece of land. It's only $20,000. I tell them run. But what kind of advice do you give for our newer agents and those prospective newer people that want to develop a piece of land or something like that?
Well, those new agents, chances are they got a lead from a buyer. So I always ask the buyer, ask the buyer why they're interested. Then I tell the new agent, well, call the listing broker. They're going to have some kind of information on it. If they give you, I hate to say it, but like a lame answer, oh, I don't know, I just got the listing because so-and-so is my buddy. Well, they know what's going on with the property. They're just not going to tell you. And so you kind of have to probe them and start asking why to the buyer, then reach out to the listing broker. And then if you can't, even reach out to the property owner themselves, because they're going to be the most motivated. And then after that, you go to reach out to an engineer, maybe try to figure out some good engineers to do some lunch meeting. I know with COVID-19, you don't really have the lunch things. I'll do a Zoom video with some engineers, create that relationship and reach out to them. So that's what I've been telling brokers. And sorry, my son's in the background here. That's what I've been telling brokers in our office who are calling me or emailing me. So And that's worked. And then they always, one broker I know, he's like, Van, it just stresses me out. We get all these leads. I don't know what to do with it. I'm like, Michael, just call my engineer, Tony Tate. He'll tell you in 5 seconds. And he's like, thanks, Van, and kind of relieved that anxiety he had when he was getting the leads.
And I've had a lot of luck calling the township themselves. If you call zoning or any of the people in the construction office and you give them the lot and block number, you got to make sure you have that, because sometimes paper streets don't have physical addresses if there's never been a house on it, or there could be more of the similar addresses within a township. So if you call the township and you give them the lot and block number, they may not be there every single day. Some of these towns, they have part-time zoning officers that are only there 2 days a week, for example, in Galloway Township. But they'll typically return your call and kind of give you a rundown for that particular zoning, that particular area. Sometimes you might have to chase the MUA to find out where the water lines start or begin, where the sewer lines end. So you're going to have to put in some time and do the research if you're really going to go down the land development route. So that's the key idea behind it.
I could just jump in. That's a great point, because there's a lot of land around here. They don't even have street addresses, and the PIN numbers may not be accurate. So I have to physically, I have one of these apps on my phone. I'll take a picture of the property. It'll give me the longitude, latitude of it, coordinates, go back, Google it, and figure out some landmark, and then I'll reach out to the town, to the municipality. So
when you do have a property under contract or on the market, however you're doing it, and when you have a listing, how do you market your personal listings? Do you market to a set of investors that you keep in hand and to brokers directly? Because if you're not using LoopNet and you're not using MLS, how do you do your marketing?
Well, don't get me wrong. I'm actually on all platforms. I'm on CoStar, LoopNet, Crexy. I'm even on MLS, even though commercial guys don't go on MLS. I put it on MLS because they're going to syndicate everywhere. I'll put it on Crexy is the big one right now. I'll put it on everything. So I'll be on almost 100 different platforms. And then I'll turn around, and we have here in the Triangle area, we have a broker-to-broker network, and I'll do an email blast to our broker-to-broker network. And then I have a separate database of just people that specialize in this, that don't like having 100 emails every day. So that's like a separate list I'll keep in a Google folder and blast that list when I have an opportunity. I'll probably reach out to them before I even list it. But sometimes what happens with those guys is they're like, well, we're not sure, or they'll try to lowball you. So the thing is, you might as well just blast it everywhere, and then that causes that fear, FOMO, fear of missing out. So I hate to say it, but FOMO is the greatest word and motivator there is right now. So.
Thank you. Guys, any more questions out there?
I know, I think somebody told me, I have to confirm, but I think legalization of cannabis is on the ballot this year in New Jersey. They've been talking about it ever since the governor got elected 2 years ago. But in North Carolina, they recently passed, did they do medical marijuana? Or at least when hemp got declassified, the old tobacco fields that have been, kind of vacant for a while, were looking into hemp production. So I know we don't have a lot of land around here in Atlantic County, but you go out to Cumberland and Salem in New Jersey, there's a lot of farms still. So if you could touch on that. I know you've done a couple deals like that, man.
Yeah, even on my own personal property, I'm always buying land. So the best way to preserve land, just so you know, is to farm it. So I know farming is an industry that's lost, but it's coming back, especially with COVID-19. I can't tell you how many people are going out to local farms and buying organic chicken and eggs and etc., fruits and vegetables. So I had a farmer, he's a millennial, and he started and I bought a property. I wouldn't lease it to anyone because I know, as a developer and through some of the teachings, if you farm the land, it retains it increases the value of the soil and nutrients, which makes it richer and better to develop on. So in fact, I got a farmer, he was paying rent, and he was, going through the old school methods of farming. And it was like sustainable living, but it was creating such great value that all the neighbors came to me and said, Van, would you consider buying my land? If you're going to continue these farming operations? I'm like, heck yeah, this is the price. And so what I'm driving at is farming is a great way to do that. So he did well during the COVID-19 because grocery stores had shortages, and he just posted on Craigslist, hey, my farm is down the road, and he was getting bombarded with people coming to his property to buy food and vegetables, meat and vegetables. And one thing I asked was, can we do hemp on this property? Can we convert this? And he goes, well, he taught me a lesson is to do hemp to really monetize it, you need over 80 to 100 acres to be successful at that. So I kind of been looking at land that you have to really go in the outskirts now of the Triangle area, almost 2, 3, 4 hours away, to find those large tracts of land to I guess, grow hemp. And there is, like Flamore had mentioned, there's a lot of tobacco fields that have been vacant, they're not being maintained as well, and hemp is like the best. Tobacco lands are the best soil for soybeans and hemp. And so I've sold a few properties here and there, but it's not been something I'm actively get excited about, because I guess it comes back to money and time. So it just doesn't make sense for Van, I guess.
Speaking of leasing out the land, some of these development projects I can imagine take years from start to finish before you zero on a piece of land, try to get all the entitlements. But Van had a great strategy of kind of monetizing the land, or at least reducing some of his costs. I think one of your land deals is near a very high traffic area. You actually put food trucks on the land, or leasing it out to kind of reduce some of your holding costs.
Yeah, exactly. It was I bought a piece of land actually in foreclosure, and I knew the stats were 40,000. The 40,000 cars back then was traveling that road, and that's high volume for us. 40,000 cars in 2009. And so I just looked at the property and realized I was given a Christmas gift. There was actually a billboard on the property, and so the billboard was pretty much advertising for free. So I've been writing them letters, and then they went ahead and paid me back rent. I call it mailbox money for all the months that they have missed since I purchased. And so I have had a long-term. I don't even do a lease contract with them. It's like a gentleman's agreement. Every 6 months they hand me a check for this set amount with 3% annual increases. So that was step one to help offset some. It was like a Christmas present with the property. I didn't know it was on there. I'm just gonna be honest. I bought the land because I liked the location and demographics. So there was a billboard. Second thing was, my dream was, well, I see that a lot of people are in business for themselves, and the food trucks back in, I guess, 2011 started losing my voice. I guess 2011, 2012, food trucks started picking up, and what I found out was they can't find land or zoning approval to park their trucks. And so I was like, holy smokes, my property is, at that time, had 40,000 cars go by. So I started marketing to every food truck. Anytime I would look at the Food Truck Association, figure out who just opened up a new truck, who just bought a new truck, and I just, it sounds silly, but Facebook prospecting is huge. I send them an instant message, and it's like something about Facebook that people just respond to you right away, as opposed to calling them or emailing or text messaging. If you send us a Facebook message, I don't know why, but people just respond like they have to on the spot. And so I got a lot of great tenants that way. And they would always be short-term leases, but I didn't care what the leases were, because we would get funding upfront, and it helped increase my yield. It was a property on foreclosure, so I'm yielding probably about 18% annual returns. So that's how we, I guess, work that land lease deal. But people are always asking ground leases. If you can find a great piece of land, it would be great to have Popeyes is the big thing right now, to come by, build their building and lease out your land, and you sit back and watch them operate and collect those mailbox checks. I hope that's a little bit. I mean, that's another class is on land leases too.
Yeah, I mean, we could go into the weeds about all the different, subclasses of land, but the idea is to keep your mind open. So don't always think that you have to put as many houses as possible on a piece of land, which may not be the highest and best use for that property. You may be looking for, if it's on a high traffic location, doing a ground lease to a big triple net lease tenant. Maybe it's a billboard or a telecommunications tower or, a food truck. I thought that was pretty ingenious. But what we've been noticing in this area is a lot of multi-class development where there'll be office or retail up front, and then the back end will have a residential component, or above the commercial, there'll be residential. So it's almost like a city within the suburbs kind of feel to it. Have you noticed that down in your way in North Carolina, or is it still pretty traditional kind of residential stays within residential, typical suburbs?
Well, with before COVID-19, you were seeing everybody want to be, it's kind of like they wanted that New York feel. Everyone to be close to downtown. Everybody wanted to be where the action was. And then what we learned in the last 3, 4, 5 years, zoning was all about, I think this was Matt's question too, and I didn't mean to skip it, was about mixed use. And so what we learned was all the municipalities were blessing anyone bringing mixed use projects. And I'm like, really? We can get that zoning approved if we go mixed use as opposed to regular retail or residential. So then the secret sauce there was, hey, let's do mixed use on this property. And the reason why is the concept is live, work, play. So everybody wants to. So that's what towns and cities wanted, was people to stay, not just to have corporate officers working or having that weekday crowd. They wanted people to live and support the community they live in. And so that's where that came from. But where do you find, again, mixed use is because zoning was making these approvals, it kind of goes back to the developer. Do they have an appetite for that type of project? And so each developer has their specialty. So it kind of goes back, I know it sounds corny, but if you Google and say mixed use developer on LinkedIn, you're going to come up with quite a few names. And if you guys have a business journal, get on that business journal and just kind of do a search, because that's like the greatest way to find the who's who in the industry, and not just the big ones, but just even the small to medium sized developers.
What I've seen in a few areas, especially up in Gloucester County, they have several land developments that have been built over years, and then they buy the farmland around there for the commercial developments, but the retail sections. But a lot of the retailers, a lot of the fundings have been popping away because of Amazon and all the big box stores. They're all afraid to do anything, and especially recently with COVID, there was a monster project getting ready to be built over about 30 acres. And they pulled the plug on it because of COVID and because of the big box. All the big box realtors started pulling out of going into these big centers, because of the concern of Amazon and everything else. So I'm starting to see more of small little stops than the big boxers.
Yep, absolutely. That's what's happening. Is, in fact, if I was an owner of one of these. But it's even in the news this week or last week, they're talking about these owners. They want to kick out Macy's. They want to kick out JCPenney because they got these sweetheart rent deals, so they're not paying that much. And now they're filing bankruptcy. They want to kick them out, subdivide the space, and you can get more of a smaller imprint with a higher rent value. And so you're going to see a lot more of that. You'll see malls turn into schools or medical facilities. You'll see them turn into flex retail spaces. Anything where if they can convert it and have a roll-up door in the back, you pretty much got a home run in the space. So you'll see. I think that's a trend you're going to continue to see.
Getting back to Matt's question, I see more going to like office retail of small office spaces, especially in the future as we go on. That'll be more being closer to your office, but not having to go into the city for your office. Yeah. Rather than having a home office.
Yeah, that's exactly. I guess if I break down my where what type of work I do or what type of transactions I work in, I think 20%'s been smaller office spaces, and it's exactly what Matt's probably seeing is these firms that used to lease out 10, 20,000 square feet, they're just like, we're not paying anymore. My employees are not gonna go to work. And so then they turn around and they'll call me to figure out a negotiation tactic for a buyout, sublease or something. And then on the back end, they'll turn around and, hey, can you find us something closer to home? And we have our individual offices, so there's so people can do their Zoom calls. And so kind of like this, I'm at my home office, but it's pretty much that's what people are looking for now, is they want to have a building with a bunch of small offices with hard walls and noise reductions and be close to home. So you're seeing that trend big time.
No barking dog or crying kid behind you.
Oh gosh.
So they're the same skills you're going to use to look up zoning or try to redefine it on a raw piece of land could come in handy on redeveloping projects that are already pre-existing, like shopping malls that are half filled or ready to be shut down, and vacant lots. So there's definitely the same skill set to research and go for highest and best use. Don't just look at raw pieces of land in the woods. You look at already existing structures and see how you could best use it and put people in there or put companies in place.
Yep, absolutely. So.
Now, what comes up a lot and people don't expect when they're new to real estate, Van, is entitlements, which, for a lot of people, they think of millennials asking for free stuff. But what does entitlements mean to you and when it comes to land development?
Yeah, that's a great question. Entitlements is what I call the golden ticket. That's your Charlie Chocolate Factory ticket there. If you get that entitlement approval from the city, city of New Jersey, well, that's the state, whatever the city you're in, you get that, that it's like a 3-page paper saying you have been approved with these entitlements. So why is it the golden ticket? Is because you can, once you go through the entire rezone, so it's taking a residential property and you say you rezone it to commercial use. So instead of having 20 homes with a value of $10 million, you can now convert it to commercial use, which will have a $40 million value. So once you go through the engineers and you get that rezoning approval and town council votes and they give you an approval, then you're handed the golden ticket, which is called entitlements. When you have that entitlement process, it tells you you are now allowed to go on that property and build the $40 million commercial, mixed use, retail, whatever it might be. You can go out and do it. So why is it the golden tickets? Because you've now got a ticket where you probably spent $200-300 with engineering, but now you get to sit back and now turn around and market to developers and investors. Hey, this is my golden ticket entitlements, and you're able to build at least a $40 million complex on this property. And so somebody will come and offer you a price for that entitlement. Does that make sense? Why that's so important? Or did I explain that?
Yeah, made sense to me. Does anybody have specific questions about entitlements? Or how about the different requirements? A lot of people, like I ran into one wholesaler who's trying to sell me a deal, and then when he found out that the sewer lines were never connected or run down the street itself, it's one thing to connect the house to the sewer line in the street, but then even the flood drains, the storm drains, like a lot of those things, getting the utility companies to run the natural gas or electrical lines to your property or toll, have you been involved that lengthy in the process, or do you kind of hand it off to the builder and developer at that point?
Yeah, that's another one of those I say meeting calls, but on a personal project. So our family, we are, I told you we're developers. So our bread and butter is I worked 10 years on this property. It went from 6 acres to 10.5 acres, and I'm trying to get it to 14 acres. We did win entitlements last March 2019. And so it's going to allow me to build 100,000 square feet of mixed use and have 40 customized townhomes that should sell at about in the $400,000 to 500,000 square foot range, $400,000 to $500,000 per unit. So in the process, even today, was getting Duke Energy, the power company, said they were going to put a substation on property. I'm like, what do you think you're doing? We just got these entitlements, and you're not, get off of my property. You can't do that. So we had to meet with Duke Energy and just find that win-win. And then we found out that they could, just making a call and staying on top of them. They came out. They're like, no, that makes sense, sir. We'll go ahead and put our substation here, so it's closer to the other property that's not going to do any development, and then that way it won't affect your parking ratios and your right-of lanes. And so we have that, and right now on our property there was supposed to be DOT, Department of Transportation, was supposed to turn the 2 lanes into 4 lanes, and it was supposed to be done in 2023. Now they pushed it to 2029, so that's another battle. So I guess, yes, we get involved, but we try to make the engineers and land use attorney kind of jump in and assist, because you want professionals working with professionals instead of us as an owner developer to be all emotional and just saying this is not right, this is not wrong. You just want them to do their job.
Hey, Van, one of the agents asked about dealing with the township and the people there. I mean, I responded that typically the townships, I feel, are pretty helpful in giving information, especially on land, because it increases the tax basis for the actual development itself. And rather than collect land tax, that building tax increases it substantially. But during COVID, everything has been forever to deal with anybody, to getting information out. It's like pulling teeth, getting anything approved and getting anything done. So is that pretty much correct answers across the board? And in our area, it's crazy. Some towns, people work there part-time and they have a full-time job somewhere else, because some of the cities are so small that they're not as, it's pulling teeth to get information because they work 1 day a week.
Right, they're not working, they're working from home. And no, that's a great question. In fact, that's what happened to us on the Wednesday. In fact, that's why I didn't close on it till July. We lost 60 to 90 days because of COVID-19. And the problem is we had to deal with we had to deal with representatives from the county, then we had to deal with the state, and then we had to deal with the city. So we had 3 different people, 3 different departments for, say, it was actually a sewer issue, 3 different departments, and one department, they work every day. Another department works 2 days a week. Another one was every other week. So that was a big time hassle, and that was a deal that we had done all the legwork. So now if you're starting fresh and you're trying to get information, all I could say is sometimes a phone call is not going to go anywhere because their voice messages are, their box is full. So you probably would want to figure out if you can find out the direct contact, email them, keep emailing them, because the city or municipality has to keep a record log of all emails they receive, and it tells and they also have to report who they respond back to and keep a record of that. So that's why emails is a lot more powerful than anything. And if you get an email response from a city official saying, oh, we don't really have an answer to that, or they neglect you, then you got it, it makes them look bad. So.
Right, and for those agents, email is proof. So it's proof that it was sent. Doesn't prove that I read it, but it's proof that it was sent. And you can always follow up with an email easy. Hey, I sent you an email a couple of days ago. We just want to make sure you got it, and that gives them a little more reason to get back to you and follow up with. It's okay to be a pain in the ass. I love being a pain in the ass.
Yeah,
I think
my joke is it doesn't cost you any money to ask, so it's always free to keep asking. So you might as well keep being persistent. Persistence always wins the game. So, good.
Drop the pizza off. Send that pizza in for lunch for the group.
I think coming prepared helps too. If you have the lot and block number from the get-go, you looked up the zoning code. All New Jersey townships have their zonings online. It's e360.com is the website. I just go to Google first. I'd be like Galloway Township zoning or Egg Harbor Township zoning, and it'll pop up the exact link that you need. I think a lot of them get frustrated when they'll get a person like, oh, I drove by and I like this corner. Can I put a house in it? And like, they don't look up the zoning. They don't look up the setbacks, any kind of requirements whatsoever. If you come in there with specific requirements or history or knowledge, you're probably like, well, it used to be a 3-bedroom house in 1989, but it was most recently used as a retail storefront, but the zoning allows for traffic use. Can I put a car dealership on there? So like, and they're like, okay, let me look in deep. Oh, okay, yeah, it makes sense. You might just need a non-conforming use variance in front of the zoning board, and they'll help you. But if you come in there with very generic overbrand questions, that's going to take an hour just to even peel back to the heart of the matter. That I think is when they get frustrated. And like Noel said, if the zoning officer or any of the local officials who are getting a set salary, regardless of whether they answer your question or not, are giving you a problem, I'm sure if you go to somebody on council or the mayor or somebody higher up who wants to see development, who wants those ratables in towns, they're more likely to be much more receptive. And the back end, you'll get a call back from the zoning officer pretty quickly right after that, especially if you're a taxpayer in that town.
That's a great point. In fact, that's something I should have mentioned is being in the city you live in and knowing who your town council members are and seeing who you're helping to vote or get elected, knowing them will assist you in that zoning vote. And
And it depends on the culture or political atmosphere of the town. Like some towns are in desperate need of ratables where they're actually having billboard signs offering 5 to 10-year tax abatements. I mean, they won't charge you on the development appraisal of the property you put on the land just because they need the jobs and the construction in town, and eventually they're looking long term to have that sort of development stay in house. And then there's other cities like Boston, where Van is from, where the town council gets voted in to stop development because they fear gentrification or the changing of the character of towns. Like some of these towns are like 300 years old in New England. But so you really got to understand the local politics and the local economic factors at play. Really get a good sense of what you're trying to accomplish. And keep in mind, every house, at least in our area, every house was actually a negative tax balance to the township. They factor in what it, on average, the cost of schooling children in the school system and other, government services that people are like, wow, we added 1,000 homes in the last 3 years, but my taxes keep going up. Yeah, because it costs like $12,000 to $15,000 per year per child in New Jersey school system, and you're only paying like $6,000 to $8,000 a year in taxes, which people are like, oh, wow, that's one of the highest in the country, if not the highest, but it's still not enough to cover the services. So overall, everybody's taxes have to increase for your home to be built. So that's why they start adding a lot of developer fees. They start unloading a lot of the different utilities and street upgrades to the builders and developers, making it not cost effective to build single family homes in our market. Any other questions? Let me see. See if we miss. And then our particular area, there's a lot of different items. Like if you're on the islands, you have to worry about flood zone. I mean, the new elevation certificates post Sandy. If you're out near the river, you have wetlands, pinelands issue. And then old developments, you have to deal with environmental issues that might have been from old leaky oil tanks, or, even worse, sometimes asbestos is an issue. So keep that in mind. And then the old adage, you get what you pay for, definitely applies to land. If you get a client and they're calling you up and it's a $10,000 land deal, most likely than not, it's not buildable in its current form. Doesn't mean it can't be made buildable if you're willing to invest the time, effort, and money to get it to that point. But a lot of times, at least in our area of notice on the mainland, the development costs are much higher than what you could resell the property for. So if you're looking at it, because I've had investors want like, oh, I can't find any flips. Why don't we buy a tract of land and build 6 homes? And I'm like, well, if you work out what the sales price per square foot is and what it's going to cost you to build that without the land, even if I give you the land for free, you're not going to make any money. Yeah. So keep that in mind. Usually outside of Atlantic City on the island, anything less than 100,000. And on the mainland, you still have to look into each particular lot if your client's interested, but usually under 40K tends to not be buildable. So all those 10,000, 20,000 land deals, they're going to be holding on to the land for a long time, probably before it, if ever, gets buildable. But keep that in mind.
And I will tell you,
okay.
I will tell you, don't listen to what sellers tell you. Do your own research. The sellers might have an approval from 5 years ago or 10 years ago. That approval is no longer any good. So areas rezoned from 1 acre to 5 acres, and you have 2 acres of land, You could buy that property for, hey, I got 2 acres. This is fantastic for $35,000. But then when you call the city and they go, oh no, you need 5 acres to build. You got to go find 3 acres somewhere else.
Yeah, that's a great point. There's a couple of deals out here where they had zoning approvals for say 15,000 square feet of retail use, and they just sat on it. So their zoning approvals expired, and then they were scrambling to get it reapproved, and then they had to go through a voting process all over again. So that's a great point you made there. And then I just caught Lisa G's question about kind of made me laugh because the towns and municipalities, they do once they know they have once they realize they have the power, it's kind of, sometimes they do have a chip on their shoulder. So what I've learned here is kind of going in as like Billy Bob and just kind of just play, hey, but, my family kind of looking at this property and what do you think we could do with it? And then they will start opening up. So I mean, I know it's a little different up there, but that is a great point. Is you just kind of have to be so humble when you start talking to these officials.
Super nice.
Yeah.
Because if you're super nice, it's hard for them to be mean.
100%. 100%.
Now, if you do decide to get a land listing, what are some, I guess, tricks of the trade differ from normal residential listings? Like I know in my market, if the land listing is typically raw land, hard to develop, under 100K value, I usually recommend at least a 9 to 12 month listing and a 10% commission rate to be split equally between the buy and sell side. And then usually I say, especially if it's on a busy road, you may not ever sell it, but at least you get a nice free billboard spot. So usually I recommend splurging and getting a nice big sign with your face and number on it, and it'll give you some exposure at a very minimum. But always pricing is key. So when comping out, I usually go as far as 2 years out, and sometimes you can't find, especially in an irregular lot, the exact size. So what you'll do is try to take a per square foot or per acre and kind of factor in whether it needs to be, whether it's wooded versus cleared, whether it's near a highway, different zoning, and try to work out a per square foot or per acreage, and then use that to multiply by the amount of land that you're listing, and then to determine a kind of approximate comp. I don't know if you have any other insights on that, Van, but.
Yeah, no, that's I guess the same thing I've been running into. I get questions from our agents is, hey, I can't find a comp for this, and I always laugh because the seller knows that, and then it becomes subjective. So you have to go. It's like you have to do homework. What can you do on the property? What's the highest and best? What are the setbacks? What does the engineer say? What does the town say? Will the town allow you to build? So that's kind of the tough part if you can't find comps. And then signage and marketing. I mean, if it's on a main road where it's visible, yeah, always stick a sign regardless of, even if it can't be seen, still stick a sign, because if someone finds it online, they may drive to it without telling you and look for it on their own. And so you want to still have some kind of property identification on it. So that's my thing. There was a parcel I had that's probably 40 minutes from my house, and I didn't stick a sign on it. And it took me, it's kind of like you'd think I'd know better. And I realized 4 or 5 residential brokers tried to find the property. They didn't live in the area, and they couldn't figure out what parcel it was. So I had to send them pictures I had of the property for them to identify. And so then I realized, even if it's can't be visible off the main road, still stick an identification on the property.
Definitely. And then if a residential real estate agent wanted to work with a land or commercial broker, how do you typically structure those? What do you recommend?
Well, as you might have seen, I've done some deals with Sharon Hawker here in our market. So it really, I structure it depending on, I always phrase it kind of, what are you going to do? What value, I hate to say what value you're bringing to it, but what work are you willing to put on it? And usually they don't know what to say because they don't know how to work the land deal. And so I kind of said, well, so that's step 1. Step 2, before I get to that, I'll ask what's your relationship with the seller owner. So if the seller owner has a tight relationship with them, then I'm just going to pretty much do a 50-50 deal and say, this is your job. You manage your client, you manage your relationship. I'll manage the property and teach you as we go along. So why I do that is because I never like to, I don't like to disappoint, but I don't want to deal with someone calling me every other day. Hey, what's going on with my property? What's going on? So we're too busy for that, but at the same time, we don't want to neglect the client. So that's how I kind of set it up there. So I'll just do a straight 50-50, or if I'm like, hey, if I'm going to do most of the work, then we're going to do a 70-30. I get 70, you do 30, because you're going to learn, and you're going to you're going to door knock, you're going to put flyers in mailboxes, and you're going to do X, Y, Z. So.
Yeah, and honestly, that's a great deal. With just the value of learning the process, so you're not getting yourself in trouble when you're doing these type of deals. You're not losing the deal, because more likely than not, 30% of something is a whole lot better than 100% of nothing if the deal doesn't close. But most of the time, for most people who are residentially focused, I would say you're probably most likely better off, unless you're really interested in land development, is to hand it off to somebody who does it every day. If anything, sometimes it takes more time and effort to slow down and teach someone the ropes than if you just did it yourself. So you're better off just handing it off and getting a referral fee. And you can still post it better on Facebook at the end of the day and get the credit if you want. But a lot of times you're better off focusing on residential and getting another listing, another buyer client offer, than trying to work a long-term land deal.
Well, one thing, if I can jump in, is one thing I really learned in the past was I tried to do that, and the other broker did not have any knowledge and was not giving me the questions and answering directly, and it almost got me, I'm liable for their, I'm just gonna be blunt about their stupidness. I was liable, so I was like, yeah, this ain't gonna happen again. So you have to think about, can someone sue you if you partner with someone? So that's the risk, and is it worth it? So sometimes I'm like, if someone does ask, hey, I only will do a 50-50 or not, I'm like, fine, good luck. There's plenty of work, there's plenty to do, and I know if you don't have the skill sets, you're not going to find someone else to give in. It's just the way it is. So you just have to be, think about, do you like your license? Do you like your life? Is it enough to be sued over? So.
No, absolutely. Does anyone else have any questions? I want to be respectful of everyone's time and Van's time for taking the time today.
Yeah, Van, I really appreciate you coming out here. I mean, you gave us a lot of great information.
Yeah, Van is the commercial man down in the Research Triangle. So even though he's in the Raleigh-Durham area, pretty much anything in North Carolina, if I have anything going that way, I call Van first. He's familiar with Charlotte, Wilmington, and he's got a lot of contacts all over the country. So even if you have stuff in Texas, he knows brokers out there. He's very well connected in KW commercial world specifically, and KW or just commercial in general. So if anybody had a referral for you, Van, what's the best way to reach you, you would say?
Yeah, well, thank you again for this opportunity. It's kind of new to me. I haven't done too many of these Zooms where I'm teaching, but appreciate it. Feel free to reach out to me, hashtag me, friend me, LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram. I'm getting a ton of business because, I'm just gonna be honest, a ton of business on social media. So let's stay connected. You can email me at van@vgrealty.com. If you email me, I can send you one of these, like, not the book, but the due diligence. One of these handouts I got from the commission about due diligence and doing commercial properties or land. And so it might be a nice little checklist for you guys to kind of just have on hand too. So it's van@vgrealty.com.
And I in the chat, in the first comment, I posted not only a couple resource websites, but also vgrealty.com, which is Van's commercial arm of his business that his brand. So you guys could get a little more background on Van, his listings, and reach out to him directly. He's also big on LinkedIn. And if anybody has an active North Carolina deal, I could reach out to me personally. I could text you Van's personal cell number.
Wonderful.
Cool. Anybody else before we let Van go? Very valuable time with a key commercial broker here.
All right. Thank you, guys.
Thank you, Van. Have a great day. Oh,
All right. You guys too. Thank you. Appreciate
thanks. Bye-bye.
it. Take it back.